The too long didn't watch summary of this PC port report for the Saints Row reboot is that it is an absolutely fantastic port of a game that is a complete and utter pile of dog shit. You should not buy this game. I bought it on the Epic Game Store because that is the only place you can buy it, fully packed with de novo DRM, but that's not even why I'm saying that it is a game you shouldn't buy. It's because it is completely vapid, soulless, and one of the laziest efforts I've seen in a long time from a AAA title that feels like a budget bag of crap. It is something you absolutely should not buy. I bought it so that you don't have to, and I'll be refunding it so that I don't have to ever play it and so that I can get my $60 back. It is bad. Real bad. So, we're going to get into the graphics options. We'll talk about what's bad about the game. We'll talk about the performance, which is solid. The performance is excellent. I really wish other games were doing what they did with the performance in this game. It's really good performance, but such a bad game and a complete waste, honestly. But first, today's video is brought to you by Keysfan.com and their software super deal where you can get some of the best prices out there on Microsoft software, especially with my coupon code. You can get half off of Windows keys, as well as 62% off on Microsoft Office products like Windows 10 Pro, Windows 11 Pro, and Office 2019 Professional Plus, and Office 2021 Professional Plus, and they've also got a bundle with Windows 10 Pro and Office 2019 in the same package. To save money on Windows 10 Pro, just go ahead and add the key to your cart, which starts off at $15.17. But once you get into your cart, you can go ahead and apply my discount code at checkout YTB50, and that will give you a shocking 50% off, bringing the price down to just over $7 at $7.58. And when you proceed to checkout, you can pay with either a credit card or PayPal, whichever one happens to fit your needs. And this also applies to Microsoft Office products, but again, you're going to get 62% off on Office products with the code YTB62 at checkout. Applying that to the $67.40 price, Office 2019 brings the price down to a stunning $25.61. So I don't know what you're waiting for. If you need your software keys, head over to keysfan.com right now and be sure to use those coupon codes at checkout. YTB50 on Windows products for half off, and YTB62 for 62% off on Microsoft Office products. Before we jump into the graphics options, I just want to do a quick word on the performance in case anyone doesn't watch all the way to the end, which I'm sure will be the case as people like to skip around. This game runs so smooth because it compiles shaders. The game actually offers DirectX 12, DirectX 11, and Vulkan that you can pick in a splash screen that pops up when you go to launch the game from the Epic Game Store, which is great. You do have to use DirectX 12, though, if you're wanting to take advantage of the ray-traced ambient occlusion. So all of my playtesting was done in DirectX 12, but like I said, you can use Vulkan, you can use DX11, and thankfully in DX12 and Vulkan, it compiles those shaders, so you don't have those usual hitches and stuttering that we've been seeing so much in recent years in DirectX 12 and Vulkan titles. And that's something that I think all AAA developers need to be doing. So in that regard, and in regards to the way that the game plays, the smoothness of it, the frame rates, the frame times, just absolutely flawless. Yes, the frames will come down below 60, because some scenes are quite taxing and complex, especially when you use the ray-traced ambient occlusion in the game, which doesn't actually have a huge performance hit. I did try switching it from ultra to high, medium, low, and off, and honestly, I could not see any perceivable difference in terms of the visuals or the performance going from low to ultra, but turning it off, you can definitely tell that the ray-traced ambient occlusion was now gone, and it did impact the frame rate by about 10 FPS playing at 4K on a 3080 Ti. So it went from like basically being just around a solid 60-ish. If you turn it off, it was jumped up to about 70. So that was about the impact of the ray-traced ambient occlusion, whether it was on low, medium, high, or ultra. So performance on the game, solid. But before we get into anything else, let's jump into the graphics options, and I'll let you guys know what's available in here if you do happen to pick this game up. While I was playing at 4K, they have full screen, borderless full screen, and windowed, has HDR support, high refresh rate support, all of that. I was running VSync off. There's an FOV slider, which I had set to 75. It does say that it can have negative effects in the game because you are essentially putting more information on the screen, but you can go all the way from 35 up to 110, so you're going to have to pick your preference based on what you like. You can turn off the HUD if you want. It does have low, medium, high, and ultra graphics presets, but mine's custom because I turned off things like motion blur. The ray traced ambient occlusion, as I mentioned, is here. It can go from ultra, high, medium, low, or off, but I chose to play ultra as I didn't see a massive frame impact, but it was actually pretty nice visually having that on. There are some advanced options, but down here you can turn things on or off like motion blur and camera shake, which I got rid of, as well as takedown cameras. And then in the advanced options, we have a decent number of options in here. We have anti-aliasing, which only has a couple of options. We have TSSAA8X, which sounds really taxing, but it really isn't. They also have FXAA and off, but there was like a 2 FPS difference between FXAA and TSSAA8X. There's no 4X or 2X or just regular. I don't know why it's even called 8X, but there it is. In here, these are all the highest that these options go. So if it's at high, it's just because it doesn't have an ultra option. So that's what it is. So we've got scene detail, shadow quality, water quality, undergrowth, post-processing, depth of field, effects, texture cache, anisotropic filtering. We've also got general reflections, which are not ray traced. It's only the ray traced ambient occlusion. Planar reflections, screen space reflections, vehicle shading, global illumination, or HBAO ambient occlusion, which is just normal or lower off. That's it. There's no higher option available than that. And yes, you may have noticed that the game is missing DLSS and FSR. It does not make an appearance in this game, sadly. That is really one of the only gripes I guess I would have with the graphics options in here, as that would be nice for people on lower end cards that want to get a higher frame rate, or any card, honestly. Also, you can fully customize controls, gameplay. There's a decent amount of accessibility options, and I love that in the audio options, you can switch between things like 5.1 surround, stereo, TV, headphones, 5.1. Not enough games do this, honestly, but I always appreciate when they do, because sometimes I do play in headphones, and oftentimes I also play on my 5.1 surround sound setup. So it's nice that they have that. And also for streamers, you can turn off licensed music. So lots of really good stuff in here, lots of subtitle options as far as opacity and backgrounds are concerned. So like I was saying, PC port quality on this is very good. There's really not too much to complain about. The performance, like I said, it does come down below 60 at times during some scenes, as I'm playing at 4K on a 3080 Ti, and the game doesn't really look that visually taxing, but all in all, it is pretty taxing to run. It's fully utilizing my GPU, so it's doing what it's doing, but the frame rate was smooth overall. Even when I would see it come down into the mid or even low 50s, playing on a G-Sync monitor, because it wasn't like a sudden spike. The GPU was being fully utilized, and it was just how it was rendering the scene. It was all very smooth transition, whether it went from 52 to 70 or whatever, or anywhere in between, which is about the general range. I would say most of the time it was like sitting right at 60 for me, or just below or just above 60 frames per second. So I didn't have any issues with playing the game as far as the smoothness of it was concerned. Didn't see any of those big frame time hitches and spikes that we generally see in a lot of these games. So overall, PC port, 10 out of 10. No complaints there. But we have to talk about the gameplay of this game. It is just, vapid is the best word I could possibly come up with. And I looked up the accurate definition of vapid, and this is true. It is offering nothing that is stimulating or challenging. That is the definition of vapid, and that is the Saints Row reboot in a nutshell, folks. And I'm fully aware that the Saints Row game should not be taken too seriously. I have played every single Saints Row game and beat every single Saints Row game that has come out, going all the way back to the original on the Xbox 360. I played the third remastered, or the remake or whatever. I played Gat Out of Hell. All the Saints Row games I've played, I've enjoyed them in co-op. They're not like an S-tier game to me, but they're a fun time. There's usually a lot of activities and some funny scenes, and they're nice to play in co-op, if I'm being honest. So, you know, I get what Saints Row is supposed to be and what it's not supposed to be. But this is not fucking Saints Row. Like, yeah, it's like a Saints Row like shell. It's like a candy coating of Saints Row, but it's not Saints Row. The world feels completely empty and lifeless. Driving around the world, there's like nothing going on. There are some streets you'll go down and there'll be a decent amount of cars. Other streets you'll go down and it'll be completely empty, like a fucking ghost town. Not a single person walking around on the sidewalk. I had to go looking for a few minutes before I finally found like 2 people walking down the street. I started shooting up a bunch of cars, and like 3 cops came, they died, and then that was it. Nobody else came to try to arrest me or stop me or do anything. The missions also are really boring and empty. The shooting is boring. And like I said, the other Saints Row games, you're not supposed to take this stuff too seriously. So I'm sure there's a lot of fans of the Saints Row games that are going to be like saying, well, that's just Saints Row. That's just how it is. Like, no. If you've played the other Saints Row games and you play this Saints Row game and you're going to tell me that this is the same as those, I think you're lying to yourself, if I'm being perfectly honest. It is empty. It is a lifeless world of nothingness. The visuals are okay at times. Like, I think the character models for like your main character and the main story characters are, decent. It's what you would expect from a Saints Row game. But when you're actually playing and running around, they don't look very good. I'm talking about mostly in cutscenes. They do look pretty decent. Like your main character, when you create them, they've got a full custom, character creator and all of that, which is not as good as in previous games, but it's still, you can have some fun with it. I spent about 15-20 minutes tweaking my character and making him into like a fat version, like not a fat version, but basically like Willie Fisk from Spider-Man, but with a bad comb over and some mutton chops. He basically ended up kind of looking like not Al Pacino, Al Capone, Scarface. Like basically ended up kind of looking like him at the end of it, but with massive burn sides going down the side of his face, or mutton chops, whatever you want to call them. So I kind of enjoyed the character creator, but it was not as good as in previous games. But so back to like the gameplay, like the things I have to complain about, like the game has tons of bugs. I only experienced a few bugs here and there, didn't have any crashes, but there's a bunch of videos out there that I could recommend that will show you just how buggy this game is, how there are some side missions and main missions that can be virtually impossible to complete because just things don't spawn in and you may have to restart missions and things like that. So I didn't get to experience that because, like I said, I only played for about an hour and a half on Saints Row, as I was very quickly realized I was going to be requesting a refund for this game. But the shooting and the driving is something I can definitely speak on. The shooting feels so unresponsive and flimsy. It's like you shoot things and you shoot them and their health bar goes down and they die, but you can't really feel it. You know what I mean? There's no impact. There's no, even playing, like if you play something like Battlefield and you shoot someone, like even though there's no vibration in your mouse or anything like that, like you can feel it. There's a punchiness to it. You can tell you've made impact when you shot something. It's weird to describe, I guess, to some people, but as gamers, you guys should know that there's a feedback that you can see visually, audibly when you shoot things. In this game, there's none of that. It's just, you're just spraying and praying, things die, and you move on to the next room and shoot more things. It is not responsive. It does not feel good. I would also say the exact same thing for the driving. In previous Saints Row games, it's always been over the top and silly in terms of the way the car is handled. That's not really the case here. I mean, yes, it is silly in terms of that the laws of physics are completely ignored in this Saints Row game, which could be okay, and it could be fun, but it's more feels like it's just lazy and just slapped together. Like you can drive 100 miles an hour down the street, slam into a car, and they just dink off of you and you keep going. And the steering is also really bad and unresponsive. Like, I don't get what it is, but you come up to a turn and like you'll hold down A or D on your keyboard and try to turn, and like the car just does nothing. It feels like it has no physics to it. It's just like it's like trying to turn a brick. It's just not good. It doesn't feel good. It's not fun to play. The previous Saints Row games, while silly and over the top, were always a good time. They were fun to play. They didn't take themselves too seriously, but it also showed some restraint in that regard. This Saints Row has no restraint in all the bad ways, in the worst ways possible. It's so lazy and slapped together. Like, I cannot give this game a bad enough review. Of course, like I said, the PC port, solid, 10 out of 10. But there's no fucking reason to play it because the game sucks a bag of dicks. A massive bag of dicks. It chortles the balls of all the dicks that are inside of the bag. That is what Saints Row does, folks. It's abysmal. It is an abysmal effort, and they should be ashamed of themselves. It's no wonder they launched it on the Epic Game Store only. You can't put any fucking reviews on there. If this game was on Steam right now, the reviews would be in the toilet. They'd be getting lambasted left and right, my boys. So please do not play this game. Do not buy this game. It's Epic exclusive. It's packed with Genuvo DRM. It is lifeless and soulless and the worst Saints Row game ever made. Ever. Bad. I'd rather play fucking Crackdown. All right, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. I hope you guys all have a fantastic day. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and I will catch you next time for another video. Peace.
I thought that went great.